I think there were cases of rainbows in paintings before Frederick Church, but he was really the daddy of the rainbow as far as I'm concerned.
Welcome to The Love of Art, the Periton podcast. Here, artists speak about other artists that fascinate them. Musicians, writers, filmmakers, actors, designers, in a very personal way. We believe that art belongs to everyone. As French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu wrote in L'amour de l'art, culture is not a privilege bestowed by nature. If everyone had the means to obtain it, it would belong to everyone. Emma Webster's landscape paintings teleport viewers into the otherworldly. The places she depicts, convincing and hallucinatory, merge spatial expectations with mystifying fantasy. As a 21st century landscape painter, she subverts convention. She is nevertheless a dedicated student of the masters. In this episode, she talks about one of the most prominent American Romantic landscape painters, Frederick Church. Enjoy!
I grew up in California. In a lot of ways, I grew up in an idyllic landscape. I came of age in a place that most people think of as a kind of vacation destination, and it was a landscape that didn't really change with the seasons. There wasn't a lot of art or museums, but when I remember my childhood, I was outside all of the time. I was at the beach every summer, and though I went to museums when we went on trips, really the way that I saw art was just in casual paintings in the house. Both of my grandfathers were painters, and the paintings that we had in our house were all a bit wonky, imperfect, and for that reason, I saw paintings as something that was very approachable, something that was handmade. There wasn't anything particularly special about art. I mean, there was a mystique about their garages, their studios, but paintings themselves were sort of fun, and I felt welcomed into the arts. And maybe it's that kind of sense of can-do or adventure that brought me to Frederick Church. If I'm honest, he was a discovery that I made more as an adult. I think that his work requires a certain level of diligence that I definitely didn't have when I was younger. But when I went to Stanford, I was fortunate enough to study under Brian J. Wolfe, who is just this brilliant thinker and writer of this book, Romantic Revision, which is all about the birth of art in America and this link with the Transcendental movement. And at the time, I don't think I really clocked how interesting the paintings were visually. Then when I went to Yale and did my MFA, I studied more of Claude Lorrain, who was a painter from the 1600s. But I began to sort of circle back to Frederick Church through that. I read somewhere that Mark Twain, when he first saw one of Frederick Church's paintings of the Andes, South America, he wrote that at first it just struck him as this lovely, benign landscape, but then the longer he looked at it, the more sort of bamboozled, befuddled he was by all of the detail. And it was that shift, that realization of how incredibly complicated the paintings were, matched with how he had so quickly taken that for granted at first sight. And I think about that a lot, this idea that the first impression is really, really sort of soft and almost feels very obvious, but then they unfold in their diligence, and that element of exploration for the viewer is really what keeps you there. One of my favorite artworks, or an artwork that really sticks out by Frederick Church, was actually one of his first paintings that brought him into prominence, that he painted in 1857, and that's his painting of Niagara Falls. It toured around the country and really established him as this spectacular painter. And it's giant. I mean, it really is a stunning spectacle of a painting, wherein you're situated almost above Niagara Falls. There's no ground. and you feel as if the water is rushing under you and then down over the falls into this pit of oblivion. And in the pit, there's this very subtle, tiny, dewy rainbow. And this painting is just, it's terrifying. It's terrifying and it's brilliant. And the movement of the water, the light, it's incredible to think that he put that together. And he did that when he was 31, which I find to be just mind-boggling. Frederick Church was known for his expeditions. He approached painting like a research project. He traveled to South America. He traveled to the North Pole. He was an artist that lived outside of the studio and understood that looking was the primary demand of an artist. Church to me was insatiable. He really wanted to see the world, and in pursuit of vision, he invented all sorts of incredible techniques. For example, he came up with his own color cheat code that it's similar to how we use Pantone now to standardize colors by giving them names, HTML codes. I mean, I've been reading a lot about Frederick Church, but he went on an expedition to the North Pole in 1857. He went with his friend Louis Noble, who was a pastor. They went up to the North Pole on a boat named Integrity, which I think is just so fitting to go to the end of the world with integrity. But so they get near the North Pole and then branch off into the smaller rowboat to look closer at the ice caps. And I just picture Frederick Church and his pastor friend sitting in this tiny rowboat, surrounded by that freezing cold water, staring at icebergs. And I can't imagine how terrifying that must have been to bring out your palette and your canvas and do painting studies in the middle of a rowboat in that near-death experience. I mean, he really had his life in his hands in pursuit of this picture with the water and the climate. And so his dedication to capturing something like that is of such a feat that we need to remember. Frederick Church, though, he tried so hard to paint things even that were fleeting. So he went up and he painted the Aurora Borealis, which again is incredible to me to think of sitting and trying to paint electric charges as they move through the air. It's a case where everything is shifting. Nothing stays in one place. The colors are constantly moving, and to try and make a painting under those circumstances is so ambitious. Church is such an important painter when we consider these implications and how he expanded also the discourse of spirituality in America. His sense of wholeness in the imagery has this connotation, has a spiritual premise that there is no such thing as empty space. Everything in his scenes is given a sense of importance. There's an assimilation of details that's a kind of striving for unity. Nothing is simple. He makes mountains out of molehills, and I think this is our job as artists, that we must investigate what others do not. Like scientists, artists need to have a disposition of observation, research, curiosity about the world around us. And personally, I'm also just so tied to Frederick Church in the sense that, I mean, I'm 34 and Frederick Church was 35 when the American Civil War broke out. And to think that he was my age, he's born in Connecticut, and very much on the side of the North Union, and he created this incredible painting, Our Banner in the Sky, that was released as a popular color lithograph. And it's this beautiful image of the sky torn open, and the reds of these clouds look like the rips within the American stripes of the flag. And there's this combination of kind of heaven and hell on earth, where we're peeking through the reds into this starry, beautiful night sky, but then this flag is also existing in shambles and tatters. And it's a hugely moving image that was very popular even in its time in the 1860s. And I see a massive parallel to where the country was then and where it is now, and how the United States is so broken in terms of race relations and the long overdue conversations that need to happen. I think there's a direct mirroring of that painting and the stakes and the stage that America is in at this moment. Church was one of the most successful, wealthy, well-known artists of his day. He was really at the forefront of when artists sort of began to be living celebrities. And out of all of the painters who came out of the Hudson Valley School, this American school, I think maybe besides Bierstadt, who came after, or Thomas Cole, who was his teacher, I think Frederick Church to me is the anchor of it. He's the hero. He's a man who really tried to take things that were unknown and ground them in vision. And for that reason, he tested the limits, I think, of what could be achieved in a painting. He's so powerful. And in my own practice, I would love to be that type of artist, the type of artist that's never satisfied, the artist that needs to see it to believe it. And in my own life, I try to live that way, that you could tell me something 1,000 times, but until I touch it, feel it, see it, I can't have a relationship with it. And I think that this is also why my practice is grounded in sculpture and in using virtual reality to flesh out an intangible thought, because I need to be able to see something in space before I can understand it and paint it. However fantastical my landscapes are, they come from a really concrete, literal stage of sculpture. And I love using that sculpture with technology because, again, I understand that there are things that I haven't seen. There are places I haven't been. Very much like Church's exploratory mindset, I understand that there's something coming that I don't know what it is, but I want to capture it. I want to distill it, and I want to witness as much as I want to paint.
We hope you enjoyed this discussion with Emma Webster on Frederick Church. Please subscribe to our podcast channel and follow us on social media at Periton so you won't miss any episodes or news. See you soon with more artists on the love of art.